My name is Leo Connors, and welcome to a very special edition of The Ring and All Other Sports. It's episode 300, and I got a very special guest, a professional wrestling referee who's on extended hiatus, maybe, Mike Crockett.
Congratulations on 300.
Thank you.
Thank
you very
great
much.
to be here. It's a long time coming. I remember I looked back at our messages. It was over a year ago you asked me to be here for 300.
Yep.
So hope it's worth the wait.
I definitely think it's got to be. Let's just get right into it. Referee Rich fan questions, guys. Referee Rich Landon, do you have any more New England pro wrestling videos to post on YouTube? He probably wants to steal them from you.
I think he has a couple of mine. Yeah, I do. Yeah, just like going to my parents' house and finding them. It's on the WPAN YouTube channel if anyone wants to take a look. Yeah, I got a bunch of stuff from the old Kowalski IWF.
Wow.
There's a few more to go up, and I have to dig up. There's some that I'm trying to find that I can't seem to find. I think it might be that I lended them out to people like years ago and never got them back. But there's ones that I'm expecting to find, but I can't find. So there's some, and I'm still looking for more.
All right. Ronnie Maestro, this is interesting because I don't know if this is true or not. Any relation to the Crockett family from Jim Crockett Promotions?
I wish. Would have helped a little bit, maybe. Well, it might have been too late to help by the time I got in. I got in 98, so.
Yeah.
But no.
All right. Dave Forney's got a couple questions. What are your memories of your early days with NWA New England?
That's the first person I worked for was Tony Rumble in 1998. I had been hanging around for years before then. Just like I bring my old video camera that like fit the full size VHS tape in it, and I'd record shows for Kowalski's shows and stuff like that. But the first NWA New England show I did was in not Bellingham. Was it Bellingham? Yeah, I think Bellingham, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I was thrown in the deep end, kind of. I was bumped without any knowledge that I was going to be bumped my first show.
Who bumped you?
Eric Frazier.
Oh, I want him on here.
He took care. I mean, he just kind of randomly after the match, he just decided he was going to uppercut me in the jaw. He took care of me. He didn't hurt me or anything like that. But I'm like, okay, I guess I'm taking a bump. So I just fell limp. It was dragged out of the ring. I think I ripped my pants on the stairs on the way down. But it was a good introduction to the wrestling business.
Nice. And Eric's a big dude. Remember when he started, he was so thin.
Yeah. I was actually looking back at old videos to do these videos I've been doing.
Yeah.
And I saw an old picture of him. But yeah, he definitely bulked up by the late 90s.
Yeah, big Bruins fan, too. Any good road stories from when you traveled with Steve King and John Rodeo?
Those two guys helped me out immensely in the beginning because at the beginning I was going to shows. I was 16. I didn't have a license yet. Right. So Steve King was always the driver and John was kind of in the passenger seat. I remember one time, it was November of 90, I think it was 92. Yeah, it was November 92. It was Terrorizing's first match was going to be in Burlington, Vermont.
Yeah.
And at the time, Steve had a two-seater.
Yeah.
A two-seat car. So it was, Steve and John in the passenger seat, and I kind of found a way to smush myself into the back on the drive from Burlington, Massachusetts to Burlington, Vermont, a couple hours at least, just kind of, because I wanted to get up there for that show, because I guess for some reason I knew it might lead to something, and I guess it did, with Terrorizing, a.k.a. Triple H. But that's one of the ones I remember the most, and just playing old, back in the day, he had little cassettes, cassette singles, playing all like the hits of the day, like the Fat Boys he would play randomly and stuff like that. So just, those guys, it was great traveling with them.
Nice. Thank you, Dave, for the questions. Mav, now I told you off air, Sparkles? What the?
WTF, right?
Yes, WTF.
Sparkles, she was a manager in Chaotic Wrestling in like the mid-2000s. I think she started off, she was a fan. She showed up at a show and really enjoyed the show and ended up coming to the school and doing some training. I think she trained I think everybody you come into the school, you kind of train as a wrestler.
Right.
But she ended up being a manager. First she managed Ken Phoenix, who ended up being Kenny in the Spirit Squad. Kenny Dykstra.
Kenny Dykstra, yes.
Yeah. Then she managed Chase Del Monte, and I don't think Chase was very happy with it. But
Right.
I mean, she was enthusiastic. I don't think she really had aspirations to do anything beyond that. I think it was just a fun thing for her to do.
Right.
And I think she's a mom now and stuff like that. I've seen like on Facebook. Not in contact with her or anything, but she was around for a bit and then she left. She was gone.
Well, Matt must have had a little something with her, liked her or whatever.
Or maybe she didn't.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Adam Luce. Does Vermont wrestling even exist?
That's an existential question that I've yet to really discover the answer to. No, I've been doing these videos about New England pro wrestling history every day or every weekday, and there's something about Vermont, the wrestling in Vermont. You see the results, and like 90% of the names I've never seen before. I don't recognize.
Right.
So you think did this show even happen?
Right.
It seems like it's like a different world. There's like this section of Vermont that the wrestlers never travel. They just stay there, and it's like most of them.
Right.
So that's kind of the question that I've come up with on these videos. Like, does Vermont wrestling exist? The answer is I don't know.
All right.
Maybe we'll find out.
Thanks, Adam. Shooter Scott Anthony. Whatever happened to Arch Kincaid?
Hey, Shooter. Arch Kincaid. The last I saw him, he'd come around when Tommaso Ciampa would come back to Chaotic and do shots occasionally.
Right.
He was always a mentor. Arch Kincaid was always a mentor to Tommaso because when Tommaso first started doing the Tommy penmanship thing,
right,
he was a part of Arch's group.
Right.
So Arch was always his kind of mentor. So when Tommaso would come back and do shots for Chaotic, Arch would show up. And it became at one point, Arch was managing Tommaso. And then there was a point, and Tommaso had already been Tommaso Ciampa. He reverted back to Thomas penmanship.
Right.
And managed by Arch. So Arch was back a little bit. And there was an incident with a tennis ball. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's one show Arch had a holster on either hip that had a tennis ball in it. I think it's for your dog.
Okay,
you have the tennis balls and throw them. So at one point, Tommaso had one of the tennis balls. Arch was managing him that show, and Tommaso was against Brian Malonis on the show, and Tommaso took the tennis ball, and Brian was entering the ring. He was going around ringside, and they were already in the ring. He took the tennis ball and just threw it at Malonis. Malonis did one of these. Whoa! And the ball went like this, hit a fan. And the fan, it was a woman.
Yeah.
And it turns out she was pregnant. And it was a thing where everyone was upset. The woman was upset, obviously. Right. Nothing, the baby was fine and everything like that. But just the fact, there's always a thing with Tommaso with Chaotic shows where Jamie, the owner at the time, would make up rules basically based on things that Tommaso had done. He'd say no spitting. He'd say no spraying water, which is the thing that Tommaso did. He had a water ball. He'd spray water, and it became no tennis balls because he threw his tennis ball and it went into the crowd.
Right.
But the last time I saw Arch was kind of one of those things where he'd come around and he was managing Tommaso. I know Malonis.
I was gonna say I know Brian loves him.
Yeah, and Malonis always said a thing with him because Arch always seemed like he was on, and a lot of the time, especially near the end, he was. But I had spent a lot of time with Arch.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of trips down to Delaware for Jim Kettner's ECWA.
Oh, ECWA, that's right.
So I would drive it down with him, and I'd see the veil would come back a little bit, and he'd be like a normal guy. But I think there's one time I guess I probably shouldn't say. He confided in me about something that there was an incident where he took where he was concussed. He thinks that he was concussed. That kind of rattled him a little bit. And so Arch, he was always different.
Right.
He was always very different. But I was able to see a little bit of the real guy, Nick, underneath Arch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now I forgot all about that. A lot of you guys worked for Jim Kettner.
Yeah, it was usually...
That was really good talent swap.
Yeah, the Logans, Chase Del Monte, John Walters went down with us a bunch. It was, it was probably 9 months to a year that I did it myself personally.
And the valedictorians came down,
Yep.
and I know, so I can't think of the other guys.
Yeah, the guys that came up were the valedictorians were a big one. Bone Crusher, Fred Sampson, who was Darren Young, but he came more. There was like,
IWF.
Yeah, that was like a selling. Then those guys ended up going down to ECWA as well.
Right.
And also Danny E, who's a referee now in WWE. There's a bunch of guys that like the Chick Magnets from ECWA came up. So
Mike
it was a good exchange. Yeah.
Mike Tobin and was it Danny Drake still? Was that part of that?
No,
that was
Mike,
the tag team before for Tobin.
Okay, yeah. It was,
the Boogie Nights.
Right. That was something different. That was in New York, but it was Tobin, Mozart Fontaine, and Brian Sosha. They were a trio. But yeah, there was so many, because that was actually instituted by Dr. Tom.
Really?
Because Dr. Tom Pritchard would do camps at Chaotic, and he'd do camps with Kettner and stuff like that, and he suggested that maybe there should be some sort of talent exchange. He hooked us up with Kevin Knight at IWF and with Jim Kettner. So that was a three-way kind of talent exchange, and it was kind of really good for everybody.
Nice. 2 years ago, I talked to Tom at the Gathering in North Carolina. Nobody looks at me and goes, I know you. I know you don't. I'm telling you, man, I know you. I'm telling you, man, you don't know me. I introduced myself, and he's like, nope, I know you. And I'm like, okay. It was kind of cool, though.
That was it?
Yeah, that was it. Dr. Tom. Love Dr. Tom. All right, Dan Tanaka, who's on your Mount Rushmore of referees?
I assume just like all time.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite all time is Mike Chioda.
Yep.
WWF, WWE referee. I guess you're going to have to put Earl.
Yeah.
Earl's going to be there, Earl Hebner. Like Tommy Young from the NWA. Last one, I like John Cohn, who was a WWE referee. I don't think he referees there anymore. I think he's still in a backstage role, but him, maybe Charles Robinson, just if not solely for that run at WrestleMania down the ring for the Undertaker.
Unbelievable.
That's one of the greatest moments of all time.
And he hasn't aged. I seen a picture of him from like maybe a week ago, and he looks younger than me.
Still got that beautiful head of hair. A little jealous, but amazing.
Nice. All right. Scott Anthony's back. What was the ultimate goal of Chaotic Wrestling since they had everything going in the right direction?
Chaotic, always their desire was to have a relationship with the WWE.
Right.
And
Which they did.
They did. Like informally, they had like a relationship, and they'd talk, and they'd send guys whenever they were in the area. And they'd talk to Chaotic to send guys to TV. But I think they wanted something on paper. They ultimately they wanted to be like, whether it was like a developmental territory of WWE. I think that's kind of what they wanted the end game to be. It didn't quite get there, but they had a great relationship with WWE regardless.
Even through with Brian Fury as the owner.
Yeah.
I really don't know how much with Chase and all that, but hopefully they still do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All right, he has one more. Is it true I had heard this too. Is this true certain talent were given contracts? And if so, was that a financial hindrance knowing you had certain athletes locked in?
I came in at the tail end of the contract thing. There were contracts at the beginning. I mean, it was kind of a good idea.
Right.
Just the fact that we talked about before we started recording, just the talent in the area. It's not unlimited, so a lot of the same guys will work at different shows. So they decided, well, we lock down certain guys, so that if you want to see these people, you have to come to Chaotic, which is a good idea. But the thing was, I think they were paying too much and not having enough shows. So like to break even, they were paying like a monthly fee for these talents, and then to break even, they had to run like 6 shows, and they'd only run 2.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened there. And by the time I came in, which was I think either the end of 2001 or 2002, that was kind of going away. The contract.
And that was with Jamie.
Randy? Yeah, Randy was the one that.
Oh, really?
I mean, there was a group of like 6 people, I think, at the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
Then it got whittled down, and it was by the end it was Jamie, and then Jamie brought on Adult Mark.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at the beginning it was Randy. Yeah.
I've known Mark over 30 years.
Yeah,
We worked
I know.
at Pizza Hut together. I swear to God,
tremendous.
so many years ago. All right, John Rodeo. How did traveling to shows, hanging out at Killer Kowalski's school, practicing promos, and videotaping matches prepare you for your eventual days as a referee and beyond?
It was like a great education. Like, we started going to independent shows.
Yeah.
Do you remember like in the Boston Herald, there was like a Sunday wrestling column?
Yeah.
Even
The Killer Kowalski one.
But even before that, there was one before Kowalski took it over. There was and that's where we first discovered like independent wrestling. There was listed like, there's these independent shows coming up. And Gardner, Massachusetts was one of them. I think it was in 91 or 92. I think it was 91. And we all kind of caravanned down together and went to this indie show. And it was something like I'd never seen before. I'd been to WWF shows.
Right.
But it was something like I'd never seen before, just the intimacy of it and being so close up. It was tremendous. And just eventually we keep going to all these shows, and they would, like Kowalski like noticed us and like invited us to come to the school. And
Nice.
But the thing was that John and Steve King were 18 and I wasn't yet. And
Right.
like at the time, Kowalski was pretty steadfast and you got to be 18 to train, which I think is a good thing, to be
Right.
honest.
Yeah, I do too. I do.
So I didn't really train. I would still go and watch and stuff like that, but Steve and John would train, and like on the weekends, instead of like doing things kids do, we'd go to Steve King's house and set up a video camera, and I'd be the interviewer and I'd interview Steve and John, and we'd go back and watch the tapes and see what we did. And it was we kind of did our own kind of developmental among ourselves to kind of prepare ourselves. And then I would sometimes at Kowalski's school get in the ring. They'd let me in the ring to referee.
Right.
And so I wasn't officially trained per se.
Right.
But I was around it so much that I just kind of, and I think I told you before we went on the air, like Richard Lannon, the referee,
Yes.
who you're going to have coming up, I guess, next month.
July 10th.
He was like the first guy I kind of saw up close as a referee, and it kind of, I learned a lot from him too. So when I was at that show, I mentioned the NWA New England show, and I bought a referee jersey just to have it in case. And Scott Dickinson was actually the one kind of booking, or he was in charge of the referees anyway,
Right.
on the Tony Rumble show, and he kind of said, "Okay, we need a referee. You ready?" I said, "Yeah." So
Nice.
So I felt pretty, even though I wasn't like officially trained.
Right.
I felt pretty prepared when and all because of all that stuff that John talked
Well, I
about.
mean, and you were doing it in the professional wrestling ring at a school. I
Yeah.
mean, so you would definitely, like you said, you might not have been trained, but you kind of were too, in a way.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
by being in the right place at the right time.
Definitely, yeah, exactly.
All right. John has a couple more. How did you decide to leave actively refereeing and later to return as a podcaster?
Well, I think it was 2015, and I forget when Jamie left Chaotic, but I think he probably admit that he was a little bit checked out, not completely, but and he'd go away in the summers and stuff like that. And when he was doing that, I worked for Jamie also outside of wrestling.
At the coverware, next to
Yes.
my girlfriend's work.
Yes,
In
yes.
Tewksbury.
Yes, and one day you just discovered that, right?
I see this all going in. I'm like, what are you doing?
So yeah, I worked for Jamie in his other business. So and so did Brian Malonis. We were
Right.
kind of like the last two wrestling related people standing at that
Okay.
business. And so when Jamie was off doing other things, it kind of fell onto me and Brian to take care of the shows.
Right.
And it was really weighing on me at the end, and it came to the point where I wasn't excited to go to the show.
Right.
I didn't want to go to the show.
Yeah.
So it kind of pained me. I never like sit up at night and stare at the ceiling, but I was sitting up at night staring at the ceiling like I have to quit. I have to leave. So I went to Jamie and said that I can't do it anymore. And so that's when I left, and he said something about coming back for podcasting. It was like a year later, I think. That regardless of whether I left kind of not bitter, but just kind of worn out.
Right.
But I didn't have a creative outlet anymore. And when Malonis got this offer to do the podcast, he didn't want to do it himself, and he asked me. And it was kind of something that I didn't think I could do.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about a lot, like, you wanted to have the show because you like to talk and like to talk to people.
And then I hated doing it alone.
Yeah, right.
And I had to bring in Derek Duke. And everybody told me, Mike, no one's going to want to do your show. And nobody did. Yeah, the cup's still there. But continue, please.
But yes, so I'm not a guy that easily converses and talks to people and stuff like that. Like, if you told people that I was doing a podcast that were around me and chaotic, they'd be like, that guy, the guy who sits in the corner by himself and just kind of turns his back to everybody and dresses and stuff like that. But I think it was like I liked talk radio, I liked all that kind of stuff, and it was kind of a challenge to me to kind of get me out of my comfort zone, because I was always a shy kid. I was always kind of timid and didn't kind of put myself out there. So I thought it was a good opportunity to do that. So that's kind of why I started the podcasting. And I'd still get very nervous, like interviewing people that I didn't know and stuff like that. But
you interviewed a lot of people you knew, so that had to have been comfortable.
That was like, interviewing like Warbeard and Ivar and stuff like that was always easy. But other guys it wasn't. But it was a very good exercise in kind of getting out of my comfort zones. That's why I kind of went back and did the podcast, in addition to the fact that it was a good creative outlet for me.
Right. You already answered 2 questions that I didn't even ask the questions for. The Burlington, Vermont, and then that one.
Oh, there you go.
But that's awesome. Why? Let's see. John's got more. What was your inspiration? And this is from John and Dave Fournier.
Okay.
Also, what was your inspiration in creating the Today in New England Pro Wrestling History segment?
That was, I didn't have a creative outlet after I stopped doing the podcast for a while. And I had started doing these, I think, like, what could I contribute to, like, on social media and stuff like that? And I had some knowledge of New England pro wrestling, not a ton, but I had a lot in comparison to probably other people. So I decided I would start writing these, little history things for Twitter. And I started doing that a little bit. It didn't really get a lot of traction. I think video would help.
Yeah.
Video is always more engageable than just text. So I figured I'd start doing that. And I started looking around and researching. And I found, I remember the date, it was March 6th. I was like looking around for stuff, and I saw that was the anniversary of the first ever Lobster Vision 3D match.
That's one of my favorites. I was there. I was there at that show.
So
I gave him a buck. I did.
So I said, I have to do it, and I'll start on March 6th. It was a Monday, so I figured it was like everything was aligned. It was perfect. So I started on March 6th, and then just the ridiculousness of that and how entertaining it was, I figured I had to kind of, from there, it kind of set me on a path of trying to find an entertaining or a funny way to address each day of wrestling history. So that's kind of what I've tried to do since then.
I look forward to it every day. I do. I go to Instagram, search you and everything. It's awesome.
Thank you very much.
To follow up on that, though, John did say, I ask because to me, since much of the time frame you're covering is pre-internet and thus not heavily documented, a lot of people create a fake history with false accomplishments for themselves. Your segment offers an opportunity for a credible person who experienced that era firsthand to give a truthful stories of an era gone by.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Well written, right? Well said, John.
John's great. It's tough, especially getting before the year 2000 to find stuff. But there's little nooks and crannies that you can find, and I've talked to a lot of people. And like I said, I don't know everything about. I don't pretend to be a historian or anything like that. But I like to think I do my research, and I talk to enough people to find out what's going on. So
nice. And John has another one. When it comes to video games, who is the best player you ever played in Baseball Stars?
Oh, John.
Was it John?
Yeah, one of the first times we hung out, we were at NES, this game called Baseball Stars, Nintendo Entertainment System, and I had an undefeated team, right?
Yeah.
And I decided, okay, let's play, and John was just kicking my ass. And rather than take the loss on my record, I turned off the NES in the middle of the game.
It's like me when I was a kid. I used to flip the board over if I was losing in Monopoly or something. My mother would send me to my room. I'd get my ass spanked. Oh, yeah. I was a big baby.
That was my version of the flip. Yeah,
right.
That's what I did.
You used to play the IWA play-by-mail wrestling game. John Rodeo in 1990 searched for local players. Did he contact you?
Yes. That's how this whole crazy story began. Actually, yeah. So like I said, I was a shy kid, a timid kid, and I didn't really have anyone that I would talk wrestling with.
Right.
And so I played this online, not even online, it was before online, it was play by mail.
Yeah.
You sent in money and you sent in like a little slip with wrestling moves on it, and they sent you a newsletter after that.
Nice.
And yeah, he found my name somewhere on some kind of one of these newsletters.
Yeah.
And just contacted me out of the blue. And that's kind of because he's definitely a more outgoing person. If you've seen him as a manager, you'll understand that.
Right.
But yeah, he kind of took the initiative to contact me and kind of he helped kind of bring me out of my shell a bit.
Right.
Him and Steve. So yeah, it was great fortune that I was able to be there and have John contact me and kind of because if they didn't contact me, I don't know if I would have ever gotten into indie wrestling because they kind of brought me along to the shows, and that's kind of how it all kind of started. So it's crazy how it worked out.
Yes, and you also you were part of starting the Roy's Boys.
That is
for
true.
Tony Roy's fans.
That is true. Yes, Tony. He was like almost like a legend within even like before, like way back when, between me, Steve, and John, because there was this show I taped off TV in like the maybe late 80s or early 90s. It was like a local news show, and they did a feature on Kowalski's school. And Tony was one of the guys interviewed, and just the way that he was, like he at one point he said, "Geesh." And that was just like that. Just like caught us like as very funny.
Right.
We later found out John was just Tony was just trying not to swear because he just like throws out these expletives randomly. So he was trying not to swear. So instead of saying whatever, he said "geesh," and that kind of caught us off guard and like made us laugh. So that was like an inside joke between us. So when we eventually saw that article or that column in the Sunday paper that said there's an indie wrestling show coming and saw Tony Roy on the car, like, we gotta go.
Yeah.
Come on, that's Tony.
Right.
So, and that's kind of how it all started. And we actually ended up talking to Tony after that show. And then Steve, I think, took the initiative to make shirts that say Roy's Boys, like old block lettering. Like I broke Wahoo's leg, but it said Roy's Boys instead.
Nice.
So yeah, we had our shirts, and that's kind of part of what got us noticed by Kowalski, and ended up Kowalski bringing those guys into the school, and the whole thing started. So it's crazy.
That's wild. It really is. And Tony, what a great worker. I mean, he literally was signed by the WWE doing jobs on TV all over the United States.
Yeah, and he basically trained Triple H from scratch.
Yeah,
because Triple H at the beginning was he managed the Nashua Gold's gym.
Yes,
and,
right past my house.
Yeah, and Tony worked out there.
Right,
and I think Paul knew that and talked to Tony and. How do I get started? And
they worked out in the gym, like in the back, I guess, wrestling.
Yeah, he'd just like start teaching them holds
wild.
in the back, and then ended up bringing them to Kowalski, and that's kind of how it all started. Tony was basically Triple H's first trainer. So
right.
Tony's great.
Tony is great. He was here for 2 episodes.
I saw them.
They're awesome.
It's tremendous.
All right, well, you had brought this up earlier, but you owned a video camera, which was a rare commodity in the early 90s. Was your first wrestling payday for taping matches for guys like Triple H and Perry Saturn? That's what John said. You might have got your first wrestling payday from that.
I don't think I ever saw money from that.
No?
No, I don't think I ever saw money from that. No, but it was payment enough was people wanted to see the footage and lent out the tapes. And like I said earlier, I some of them I didn't think I've gotten back.
Right.
But I'd lend the guys the tapes and they'd see them and like them, so that's kind of was payment enough for me back then.
Nice.
As like a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, can you tell us about your trip to Eastern Championship Wrestling in '94, where John was invited by promoter Todd Gordon to maybe get a tryout, which he didn't get, but and that was the weekend that WCW signed Terror Rising.
That's the same
Yeah,
weekend.
that's what he said, yeah.
Wow, John wrote a book, huh?
Yeah. He was great. He hit me up and said, he was like, "Oh, did I read that right, that you have a cry?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, can I send you?" I'm like, "Please?"
Yeah, tremendous. We went down to ECW. It was the show. it turned out being a pretty famous show. The night the line was crossed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we ended up going down to that show. Took the bus.
Yeah. Was Terry Funk main event that one?
He was on the show. I'm not sure if
Okay.
it was the main event or not,
All right.
but he's one of those guys that made you believe.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because he chased me out of the bleachers. Yeah, literally, he'd come up to the bleachers, and we just all booked it.
Right.
Just the look in his eyes.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
You believed. But that was a crazy couple days because we got down there, and first of all, trying to find the place. You get into a cab, and you say, ECW Arena. They didn't know what that was at the time.
Yeah, right.
It was kind of early on.
Yeah, the Alhambra.
Yeah.
Alhambra.
So we finally found our way down there, and the show was cool. John was trying to make headway to talk to Paul Lee. It didn't end up happening. But then I think we missed the last bus. So we spent the night at the bus station, just kind of like laying on the ground and trying to sleep.
Right.
So it was a long day and a half, 2 days, but I think it was worth it in the end. It was a great experience going to the ECW Arena, which a lot of people didn't get to do.
Right. Did you ever go to any of the ECW shows around here?
Oh yeah.
Were you at Mass Transit?
That one I wasn't at.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I wasn't at
I think
that
John
show.
was there. I think John and Steve were there, but I probably was in college at the time, and I didn't come home every weekend.
Right.
But yeah, I've definitely heard a ton about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. On most Monday nights, though, you, Steve, and his wife, Violet Flame,
Yep, Teresa,
and
yeah.
John and yourself would get together and watch Raw and Nitros. How important was that time in your life about wrestling?
It was a really fun time. Like I was kind of envious of the kids who were in high school at the time where wrestling was cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you and I, when we were in high school, wrestling wasn't cool.
No, it wasn't cool because you couldn't tell everybody you liked wrestling.
Yeah,
you couldn't. I couldn't tell girls.
Exactly. When I was in high school, it was TL Hopper and
Yeah.
Aldo Montoya.
Right.
No one's watching that stuff. But it was a great time to there was just so much going on, and wrestling was so hot, and I had the opportunity to get in the business at that time, and independently, and wrestling was just so hot, and it was a lot of fun. Just flipping back and forth on Raw and Nitro and watching those shows.
Back when millions of people watched wrestling, not a million people watching wrestling.
6, 7, 8 million, yeah.
Unbelievable. It really was a great time in wrestling. It really was. In my opinion, I think you and referee Rich Landon were two of the absolute best referees to come from New England. There's been a lot of good ones.
Well, thank you, Leo.
You're very welcome.
Oh, okay.
Can you tell us about a few referees that you think were some of the best ones that maybe didn't get enough recognition?
In the area, huh? Mike Doobie, a guy I refereed with at NWA New England, very good guy, and he did a lot of stuff for Rumble. But he didn't really get to blossom beyond that. I was gonna say Sean Bennett ended up going to WWE.
He was good too.
Yeah, and Fat Pants, obviously,
Yeah.
Todd Sinclair.
Yep.
I treated a lot of guys around me got good opportunities. I'm trying to think of people that didn't though. Wow, I just end up always going to the ones that did something.
Yeah.
I might have to come back to that. I can't really think
That's
right
no
now.
problem. You're also a great graphic designer.
Oh.
Who are some of the wrestlers you designed merchandise for earlier? When you first started doing it, or I don't know if you were still doing it all along.
I still do occasionally, but when I got more involved with Chaotic after initially just coming in as a referee, I would do a lot of the merchandise for the guys. Because originally, now everyone kind of takes care of their own merch.
Right.
But at the time early on in Chaotic would do their own Chaotic merchandise.
Right.
And that's kind of all that was allowed. I mean, it's not that that's all that was allowed, but most guys didn't have their own merch. That came in a little later on where guys had their own merchandise. But Chaotic, I was kind of the exclusive one that designed the early Chaotic stuff. And I still do stuff today, like Malonis will ask me every once in a while.
Right.
And so Malonis is the one I still do stuff for occasionally.
Well, I bought a shirt, the Curtain Jerker.
Oh, there you
You
go.
did that one, right?
Yeah, it's WPAN.
Yes,
shirt,
and do you remember that though? You guys said, "Well, call somebody the first person that buys a shirt." I waited 2 weeks, and then I bought the shirt, and I still was the first one.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
I got another question about the fantasy games. Can you tell us about the fantasy pro wrestling game called Shoot Club, also known as the Shoot Club Wrestling Alliance?
Yeah, that was something that we tried to start, like an online version of like that play-by-mail game.
Right.
This guy Ian Moore, who we met through the wrestling game, through the play-by-mail game, and John and myself. I mean, Ian was the guy who knew how to code and stuff like that, so he put together a website, and John and I were more of the creative. John much more than me. Were the creative people behind it, and it did well for a little while. It made a little money.
Yeah.
Not a ton. And as I got more involved with Chaotic, I kind of had less to do with that. I just didn't have the time. My creative outlets were kind of going in that direction, so I kind of faded away from that. And I'm not sure how much longer it lasted, but it lasted for a little while. It was a cool little game. A lot of people enjoyed it.
Right.
But it kind of went out of business like the early 2000s, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I think you already answered this because I did have a question. Well, whose idea was the wrestling podcast about nothing? And you said it was Brian was approached with it.
Yeah.
And then he brought it to you.
Yeah, it was a buddy of his had a small business, and he wanted to, like a website, and he wanted to have a podcast to kind of push the website.
Right.
And so yeah, he offered Malonis a show, and then Malonis kind of offered it to me to come and do it with him. So yeah.
Excellent. Now, the night that Vince McMahon showed up to Chaotic, were you the ref?
No, actually the referee was John Cena.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah. Hello. Yeah, you're right. But you were on the show. Yeah.
I was there. Yeah. That was a crazy night. That like people don't really believe it, but first they don't believe that Vince was there, and then they don't believe that no one knew. And the truth is, no one. The only people that knew were John's father, John Cena's father, John Cena Sr., Johnny Fabulous.
Yep.
Jamie Jamakowski, the owner. It might have been one other person. John Cena. He knew.
Brian didn't know, and Ric Flair didn't know.
No, they were the refs. They were the wrestlers in the match, and they didn't know. But what happened was when they were talking about the match in the back, John Cena as the referee was there, and he had a very specific sequence in mind near the finish that he made sure was in the match. Which at the time, Brian's just like, okay. I mean, this.
Yeah, just saying, okay.
He's the WWE champion at the time. He can do whatever. He can say whatever he wants, and we'll do it. And that's kind of how John set up the spot. He called a double down and actually a triple down because at one point Malonis hit Cena with the Chaotic belt. So everyone was laid out in the ring, and all of a sudden there's this figure appears, and as Brian Malonis tells it, Malonis kind of turns around and sees, like, is there a fan in the ring? What's this? It turns out it's Vince McMahon. He was waiting outside in a limo for his cue. I'm not sure who actually gave the cue.
Right.
But it might have been Jamie. I don't know. But he just comes in through the crowd, comes in over the barricade into the ring, and does a spot with raises Malonis' hand. He asks, "Are you the heel?" And Malonis said yes. He raises his hand and kind of like endorses Malonis, which is the greatest moment of Malonis' life.
Yeah.
And he ends up bad-mouthing Cena, who, Cena gives him the attitude adjustment and gives Malonis an attitude adjustment, and that's kind of the whole thing. I did a video on it a few weeks ago because it was the anniversary
Amazing.
At the end of May. But it was crazy night, and no one knew. And McMahon took the bump and rolled out into the limo. Off they went. Never to speak to anybody. I remember someone in the back saying, "Is he coming back to say hello?" Like, he's gone, dude.
That's amazing, though, for that to have happened. I mean,
yeah, I think the show was it was a benefit. I think
John's brother.
John's brother was hit by a drunk driver.
Yes.
He was a cop, hit by a drunk driver, and there was a benefit. So I think it was something that's important to John, which in turn is the most the biggest guy in WWE
Yeah.
was important to Vince.
Exactly.
So Vince made the effort to come out and do the show. Which
That is just so wild,
amazing,
just
yeah.
to think about that, you know? Like, I told Maria that happened. She goes, you were there? I go, no. She goes, I bet you wish you were. I go, yeah, I do.
Yeah, definitely.
Unbelievable. Well, when I introduced you, I said you're a referee on extended hiatus, but I kind of heard that maybe you're not.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, Brian Malonis, I found out that Malonis was doing a show. He's running a new promotion called Rad Pro Wrestling.
With Big Scott.
With Big Scott. And as it turns out, because I heard he was doing this, and I said, do I have to dust off my referee shirt? And I was kind of prepared to, because Malonis had run a show before at his old high school, and he asked me to be a referee. It was called Astromania, I think.
In
You were
Derry.
there? Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I was there.
So I did that show. So I figured he's going to ask me to.
Yeah.
So I'm, starting to eat right and get ready.
Yeah.
And I ask him, and he says, oh, I don't know who Scott has booked. So it comes to find out, Malonis is basically the money mark for this thing.
Yeah.
But no, as it turns out, the force behind it is, I think Malonis will, and I think he's come out and said this, that the force behind it is Scott. And Malonis is there for support. He's not involved creatively.
Yeah.
He's just there to help out in any other way he can. But I was kind of like, and it turns out we had Scott on we did an episode of the podcast, and he came back and did an episode of the podcast just to plug that show. And I kind of said this story, and Scott says, you want to be a ref? You can be a ref. I kind of forced my way onto the show.
Nice, that's good though. You deserve to be on it.
So I did the first show, which was in March, and there's a show actually this Saturday, June 24th, Amesbury, Massachusetts.
Yep.
Bear Wolf Brewing, I believe, is the name of the facility at 4 p.m. And I'll be back doing a show. Actually, it's not me, Leo. Oh. It's not me. It's Barry Burbank.
Barry Burbank. Okay.
The senior citizen official.
Oh.
So yeah, that's
awesome.
That's me, and I'll be there on this Saturday for Rad Pro Wrestling. So come one and come all.
That is pretty cool though, and the Rad Pro Wrestling is doing something different, wild characters. And I know what we said. Brian Malonis is the pit boss. Big stretch.
Yeah, basically it's just a name only. He doesn't even wear a tie. It's just the same gear. Yeah, it's a good idea because I think we mentioned earlier the fact that the talent pool is limited, that a lot of the same guys you see on the different shows, but to do this, they give every talent a unique gimmick that's not seen anywhere else. Right. So if you come to this show, you're going to see something that you're not going to get anywhere else. Even if the talent is the same, you might see in another city and stuff like that. It's definitely it's going to be unique.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is excellent. All right, let's play the name game.
All right.
Adult Mark Beaudry.
Adult is a wonderful human. He's an adult.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, and he's a wealth of wrestling knowledge. He's here with the magazines.
Yep.
A little while back. Adult's just a great friend, and haven't really seen him. I haven't seen since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anybody, and it's just been slow going since then.
Right.
Plus, I had another kid during the pandemic, and it kind of slowed me down. In terms of getting together with friends and stuff like that. But I haven't seen Adult in a long time. I got to rectify that. But yeah, just a great guy.
Yeah, he just went to WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, because he told me he was going. All right, a lot of these names I haven't brought up on a long time.
Okay.
Dukes Dalton.
Dukes
Hanson Dukes.
I don't want to be like you or like Ryan says. It's a great
Everybody's
guy.
great.
Great guy. But no, he was a trainer very early on at the Chaotic Training Center. Helped a lot of guys out. I know Chase gives him a lot of credit for helping him very early on, Chase Del Monte.
Yep.
But Dukes, he was one guy I remember very early on in when I was refereeing. Sometimes at NWA New England, it was a little chaotic there. Oh, no pun intended.
Right.
Different show. NWA New England. But some guys would do, I talked about the unscheduled bump. Things would happen where I didn't really know what was happening or going on. And sometimes I missed stuff and people would just kind of blow you off and stuff like that. But Dukes is one guy who would come up to me and say, "Hey, do you know what happened there? Like, this is what happened. This is what should have happened."
Right.
And he's a guy very early on that kind of helped clue me in.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah. Duke's a
Excellent.
great guy.
How about our great tag team? I love these guys. The One Night Stand.
One Night Stand, Ronnie Delicious,
Yeah.
Edward G. Ecstasy. They were, I wasn't there for the very early part of Chaotic, so they were kind of phasing out by the
Okay.
time I got there. Didn't really, I did some matches for them, but not too much, and didn't interact with them a lot. But they were a force on Chaotic shows early on. They
Right.
really helped draw the house, if you will. They were a big act in Chaotic in the early days.
Nice. And the third member of One Night Stand, Aaron Stevens. Aaron Idol Stevens.
Aaron Idol Stevens, Damian Sandow. He was very early on in NWA New England too. He was a young kid he did a couple of shots in NWA New England. That was kind of his first little thing that he did, and he did very well. And he was part of the One Night Stand and graduated to I think it was OVW he went to.
Yes, it was.
It was OVW, and he's done great for himself since.
He had a pretty good gimmick. He had two girls on his arms,
In OVW.
Shelly and Beth.
Yeah,
I mean, that's not a bad gimmick.
yeah, the devil and the angel. kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That was good. I like that a lot.
All right, how about former Chaotic owner and former owner of the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, Brian Fury, who I happened to see at the NXT show. And
you
he
did?
was so excited to see me. I was excited to see him.
Yeah, I love Brian. He's doing very well outside the wrestling business, and I'm happy for him. Brian was a great worker. He brought me back a couple times. Like after I retired, two people would get me out of retirement. One was Ivar. I did his last match, which was kind of a rib because it turns out it was a pandemonium match. So I had to remember 6 finishes. It was like a huge, big thing. And, I'm not in the same shape I was back then, and that was kind of a rib. But
That's funny.
the other one was Fury's last match, which kind of ended up being his last match. But
Alex Arion
Yes.
in Woburn.
yes,
That was a great show.
yeah, that was a fun match, and so I love Brian.
Like a lot of people think Alex Arion was one of the absolute best to come out of New England. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a period of time where people were kind of dogging on Alex, and I knew him back from the NWA New England days, and he's always been extremely solid in the ring, and just had a great mind for the business.
I seen him on a lot of Jeff's shows, Jeff Costa's shows too.
Oh, really?
He did some of the earlier ones.
Yeah.
And what a worker. All right, how about Julian Starr?
Julian Starr, he was. I'm sorry to talk about him in past tense. He's not.
He's very much alive.
He's not wrestling anymore. But that's why I'm saying was. He was a great wrestler, a great flyer. He could do some amazing things. I'm sorry that it kind of, in the end, he wasn't really feeling it, and he kind of got away from it. And I remember being around him at the end. I was doing like a video project that kind of petered out. It never happened. But I came back after I left to do a video project, and he was on the end of his run, and he was like the champion at the time, but he was like kind of very glum about it. And he had to get away from it, and I'm glad he did. And I think he's in a better place now. And
and he's training guys. I think he's still training guys at New Gen Pro Wrestling.
I think
at Bud's,
he is. Yeah,
at Bud's School.
I think so. Yeah.
And Scott Reed, or whatever, WFA put out a thing the other day that they were the only school in New Hampshire. That's not true, guys. That is not true. I mean, Bud's got a school too.
Yes.
The Next Gen in Manchester, but WFA is a great school. Mike Hollow. Let's talk about Mike Hollow.
Mike, he's a great nuts and bolts guy. And when I first started doing Chaotic shows, like I said, I wasn't officially trained per se, but I started going to the Chaotic Training Center that Mike was running, and that gave me further education.
Yeah.
Just to kind of really hit home with me, like a lot of like the nuances of being a referee that I didn't really fully understand.
Right.
He kind of like, and the breakdown of a match per se, that kind of it wasn't spelled out to me in so many words. And Mike was the guy that kind of hit that home for me, and that really kind of completed it all in my head. So Mike, he's a tremendous trainer.
And most of the guys that are on TV today A lot of them are trained by Mike Hollow.
A lot of them, yeah, definitely, yeah.
All right. The voice of New England wrestling, Rich Palladino.
Rich Palladino from
the best.
Yeah, from the NWA New England days. Yep. And yeah, he kind of, I mean, I don't know if the statute of limitations is passed on this, but he kind of, it was like a big scandal at the time that Rich kind of, I was at a show at another promotion to see, I mean, should I just say it? I was at an NECW show.
Yeah.
I came to watch an NECW show. This is after NWA New England. I was not doing anything wrestling related. And Rich was at the NECW show. It was the show that Cena came. Well, he was the prototype at the time.
Oh, he took on Frankie Kazarian.
Yes. So
I wish I was at that show.
Everyone was kind of like interested to see because they heard a lot of things about Cena and stuff like that. So I was at the show, and Rich kind of approached me and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" Because Rich was the talent coordinator for Chaotic at the time. And, "Are you still refereeing?" I said, "No, I'm not doing this. You want to try to do something?" I said, "Well, maybe." Because I had seen Chaotic was airing on, I forget whether it was UNI at the time, Channel 27, but they had TV, so I'd seen a little bit of it. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come give it a shot. And I showed up from there I showed up to a Methuen show, and I was doing shows for Chaotic. So that's kind of how I got started with Chaotic, thanks to Rich and the connection they made at NWA New England. So.
Nice. I was there the night that Santa Claus was there. Steve Bradley.
Yes, I wasn't there.
Unbelievable. Like, I was right. I think I was the first one to recognize that it was Bradley. I'm like, it's Bradley. Oh my God.
It was a classic angle.
It really, really was. All right. How about the owner of Chaotic and New England Pro Wrestling Academy, Chase Del Monte?
Chase, great guy, Ryan. Chase is fantastic. Friend of mine. We'd always talk about Seinfeld. We always have some Seinfeld jokes going back and forth. Chase is doing great things with Chaotic and with the Nepois. I've never.
Yeah, a lot of people call it that.
That's awkward for me.
Yeah.
But New England Pro Wrestling Academy, he's been doing great things with that.
Yeah.
And I've been there once or twice, and yeah, he's really upgraded the facility. It looks tremendous.
Yeah.
And he's putting out a lot of great talent. So
when there's pictures on Facebook, there's 18, 20 kids training there. I mean, at one time, that's impressive.
Yeah,
it's very impressive.
Well. They do very well, and I guess drawing well at the Chaotic show still too. So that's tremendous.
That is really good. How about were you ever in the old NWA New England days? Were you around Jim Cornette at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I remember there was one show that we did that had WWE talent on it. It might have been WWF still at the time. I think it was. But the main event was Big Boss Man versus the Road Dogg. And I was the referee. It was like very surreal because this is like the height of DX.
Yeah.
And I was standing in the ring while the Road Dogg is doing the whole speech.
Yeah.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, like, I was like just
watching it, right?
I know, just it's like what? Yeah, I was like, am I here right now? It was really, really weird. And Boss Man was managing, Jim Cornette was managing Boss Man, which I didn't realize the significance at the time that he was Big Bubba Rogers back in the day, and Cornette managed him. So that was probably a cool thing for those guys to get back together again. But yeah, so I was around Cornette, and at one point in the match, they're doing something on the outside, and Cornette jumps up on the apron, and he hops in the ring, and he comes towards it. I'm like, what's going on here? And I didn't understand at the time what he was doing, but he was like, he just didn't want to look dumb because they're on the outside, and he was on the outside. So rather than look, and I asked him this after, like, did I do something wrong? Like, why were you getting in the ring like that? He explained to me that the fact that he didn't want to look dumb because they were out there on the floor fighting, and he didn't come over just with a racket and start whacking them. So he wanted to come in and like, so I had to physically bring him back over, and so none of us looked dumb. So that was a great. And so Cornette was like
genius.
He's invaluable to have at those shows at the time. So he was around a decent amount of Rumble, like Rumble. Back, I say this about Tony Rumble, like he was like. He held all these little factions of people together. Like there's this group of people that wouldn't kind of interact otherwise, including like, you know, you'd have Kevin Sullivan from WCW, and you'd have Cornette from WWF
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
They were all be there. And once he passed away,
Yeah.
like, you got MWF, you got NECW, you
Yeah.
got Wrestling Star Wars. Everyone kind of broke off
Yeah.
and did their own thing. So like Tony Rumble was like the one guy that could hold all that together.
Right. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And they were good friends with like Dennis Carluzzo.
Corluzzo,
who
yeah.
was a great promoter in New Jersey area.
Yep.
All right, only a couple of minutes left. I loved your podcast with Brian. You did 200 episodes, and then you did a little bit more recently. Do you have any favorite moments from the podcast, though? Because, I mean, like I said, I absolutely loved it. I listen to it all the time.
The one with we did with Todd Hansen with Ivar,
Yep.
the Viking Raiders. He was in ROH at the time, I think. I don't think he might have done a Japanese tour by then. I think he was on his way to do a Japanese tour, I think, when we talked to him.
With Raymond Rowe, right? This was after the tournament.
Yes. And they were, we did it actually at Adult Mark's house. We all got together and did it at his dining room table. And it was just great because we knew his whole story.
Yeah.
From beginning to end.
Right.
We were not only around him in wrestling, that he was a part, he worked for Jamie as well at the other business. So we were around him, and just the fact that he would wake up at like 4 a.m, ride his bike to the train station in Lynn, take the train from Lynn to Lowell, I think, and then have someone pick him up, bring him to work, and then have someone would drive him to the wrestling school.
Right.
Then I think Tommaso would drive him back to the train station.
So he could get his bike?
Yeah, so he can get his bike.
Yeah.
It's just the what he went through to get, and just to see his success now is just so unbelievable and amazing, and it's so well deserved because Todd went through so much, including like huge like back issues and stuff like that, and shoulder issues to be able to make good money in WWE. And
I always say that many lesser men would have quit. Honestly,
Definitely.
with what he went through.
Yeah, and he probably owes a lot of people a couple dollars, because we footed the bill a lot of times for different meals and stuff like that, because he was broke at the time too, all the time. So yeah, come back, Todd, and pay for a meal sometime.
All right, help me do this. Saturday,
June 24th.
Rad Pro Wrestling.
Yes, Beowulf Brewing in Amesbury, Massachusetts, 4 p.m. bell time this Saturday for Rad Pro Wrestling.
Awesome. Mike, thanks to God. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys, we're out. Episode 300's done. Peace. Hi, guys. I hope you're enjoying the show. Listen, I could use a little help to grow my YouTube channel. So if you could please like, share, and subscribe. That's most importantly, subscribe. Send me a direct message, and I'll give you a shout out here on the show. My YouTube channel is real simple. It's just my name, Leo Connors. Thanks in advance. Peace.